The Arabian Desert is a barren wilderness that stretches from Yemen to Jordan and Iraq. It covers 900,000 square miles, making it the fifth largest desert in the world. Walking across these barren red dunes, you might think you'd landed on the surface of Mars. But what's that in the distance? It looks like a rock. No, hold on. It's two rocks. It's the Al-Nazla rock feature, a boulder that's split in half by an unbelievably straight and smooth line. Wow. It looks as if it's been cut down the middle by a powerful laser. Except the Al-Nazla is more than 488 million years old, millennia before lasers even existed. So how could such a strange thing occur? Was this an unbelievable feat of ancient engineering? Or maybe extraterrestrials got lost on their way to Mars and left this behind? If you're intrigued to find out what caused the Al-Nazla rock to split in such a unique way, then buckle in, because we're about to go exploring the theories behind this ancient feature and discover other seemingly inexplicable rock formations. Theory 1. Aliens. It's always aliens. The Al-Nazla stands 20 feet tall and 30 feet wide, its tremendous bulk balancing on two small stone pedestals, which is crazy to look at. I mean, how does this huge rock not just topple over? Well, those pedestals are in fact the bottom of the rock, only they've been carved away by wind and sand erosion, while the rest of the boulder sits perched on top. But that doesn't explain the uncannily straight line that allows a perfect sliver of blue sky to be seen through the rock. To make sense of this mystery, some observers have suggested that this is the result of some extraterrestrial meddling. They believe that a UFO landed in the Taima Oasis, where the rock is located, and zapped it apart with one of their big space lasers, which is hard to believe for a few reasons. Okay, let's put our tin hats on and just assume aliens definitely exist for a moment. Why would an extraterrestrial life form travel millions of light years across the universe just to cut a rock in half? Surely they have way more important things to do, being smart enough to have conquered space travel. But what if it was an accident? A misfire by a ray gun blast, perhaps? Maybe the aliens were enjoying a fun game of literal laser tag and one of them accidentally split the rock in half. Then they hopped straight back onto their spaceship and flew away before they could get caught. A fun theory, but unfortunately it's more sci-fi than fact, as other than the smooth cut in the rock, there isn't actually any evidence that aliens visited the Earth, that anyone not wearing a tin hat will tell you about. But then again, who knows what's out there? Theory 2. Ancient engineering. Scattered upon the surface of the Al-Nazla rock are various petroglyphs, such as this drawing carved into the rock face depicting a man leading is that a super tall horse? Maybe it's just a very small man. It's thought to have been made by one of the Thamud, an ancient Arabian tribe that inhabited the region nearly 2,800 years ago. For those ancient desert settlers to take the time and effort to carve artwork into the rock face, it must have been important to them. And if that's the case, then maybe they were responsible for the rock's perfect split. But how could they achieve such a thing, given the sheer laser-like precision involved? I mean, the first laser wasn't invented until 1958, and that was only possible after the world's biggest genius, Albert Einstein, came up with his theories on light energy at the beginning of the 20th century. So, it's impossible to think that the Thamud could have ever constructed their own lasers. Nevertheless, something that has existed since way before even the time of the Thamud tribe that might be responsible is water. Now, strange as it sounds, it's possible that the Thamud people were able to harness the power of water to split the rock. Now, how would that work? Surely water would just make the rock wet, right? Well, a fundamental property of water is its density. Water flows, but it is incredibly difficult to compress. This property of water is what allows it to deliver rock-splitting force when engineered into a hydraulic system. A hydraulic-powered compressor can crush solid iron hammers and tires like they're cheap tin cans. This is due to Pascal's law, which states, that when pressure is exerted on a fluid like water in an enclosed container, the pressure will be distributed evenly throughout the water. So, a hydraulic system works by having a container full of water with a smaller piston at one end and a larger piston at the other. In accordance with Pascal's law, coupled with the fact that pressure is equal to force divided by the area upon which the force acts, if the larger piston has an area 10 times greater than the smaller piston, the force applied to the larger piston is also 10 times greater. And that's because to keep the pressure equal, as the area is increased, the force must also be magnified. This amplified force can then be harnessed by attaching a drill bit to the other end, just like this hydraulic splitter. The splitter operates by having a central blade pushed down by a hydraulic pressure. This causes two steel wedges on either side to be forced outwards to crack and cut through the rock, creating stunningly straight lines such as this. So it could be possible that the Thamud tribe were able to cut the rock using something similar to a hydraulic splitting tool. Or maybe the Thamud tribe miraculously invented laser technology, but highly unlikely, as there's no archaeological proof. Even so, maybe our ancestors were secretly more advanced than the history books let on. Wait, what if they were aliens? Oh, I'm gonna need a bigger tin hat. Theory 3, or nothing. And while those two previous theories do sound fun, I wouldn't mention them to any geologists if I were you, because their theories on how the Al-Nazla split occurred are set in stone. Literally. Some geologists suggest that this split could have been formed due to a process called freeze-thaw weathering. This occurs when some of the desert's sparse rainfall ends up trapped in a small crevice in the rock and freezes into ice overnight. Ice? In the desert? Well, seems impossible, right? But you see, though the Arabian desert is a sweltering oven during the day, averaging temperatures of 100 degrees Fahrenheit, at night, the temperature plummets to just 25 degrees. This is because sand is terrible at retaining heat. So, without the sun beating down on it, all the heat dissipates from the desert at night. As a result, small deposits of water that have collected in the rock crevices freeze and expand, forcing the cracks in the rock to widen and lengthen. When the sun rises, the ice melts and slips deeper into the rock crack, and the water freezes and widens the crack again the next night. This process repeats itself over thousands of years until eventually the rock splits. So it's possible that this is what occurred to divide the Al-Nazla rock. However, freeze-thaw weathering typically results in more jagged lines than the straight divide of the Al-Nazla formation. Therefore, many geologists argue the perfectly straight line is the result of a joint fracture. Joints are parallel cracks formed in a rock from one of two ways: internal pressure, as the rock contracts during freezing winters, or external pressure, from the rock being shaken or tilted during earthquakes. In this case, it's theorized that the Al-Nazla rock lay on a fault line, and that tectonic motion caused the ground beneath the rock to lower slightly on one side. The resulting strain on the rock ultimately caused it to split in two. This is the most widely supported theory in the scientific world, and the theory with the most evidence, as you can see another joint here, parallel to the divide in the rock. And as you can see for yourself, the two sides of the rock sit at slightly odd angles to each other, with the right side slightly lower than the left. So if you ask the geologists, the answer to the Al-Nazla's unbelievably straight crack was right there the whole time. Now, what theory do you think fits best? Do you think the Al-Nazla is proof aliens exist, or do you agree with the geologists? Let me see what sort of ratio it is by hitting that like button if you side with the geologists, or comment down below if you believe it was aliens. And if you're interested in more deep dive videos like this, why not hit that subscribe button? Y'all done? Great. Now, what bizarre rock feature do we have next? Death Valley haunting. Death Valley temperatures dropped. In the early morning, the ice sheet thawed and broke up, creating a slippery path that the sailing stone slid along, pushed by a light wind. Typically, the sailing stones slide along straight lines, but sometimes the rocks can veer off into zigzag tracks. Scientists found rocks with rough-bottomed surfaces tended to leave straight tracks, whilst smooth-bottomed rocks meandered across the desert. Well, I'm sure there are 17 hot springs in this area that range from 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature of a nice hot bath, to a boiling 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Spicy. And yet, it's the presence of the hot springs that have resulted in Pamukkale's world-famous white terraces. The hot springs water is superheated underground by magma under the Earth's crust. The water then rises up through the bedrock and becomes supersaturated with calcium carbonate. When the water breaks the surface, the carbon dioxide gas degasses from it, leaving behind a soft gel of calcium carbonate. This calcium carbonate then hardens, crystallizing into the shimmering, snow-white travertine steps Pamukkale is famous for. By modern geology standards, this seems pretty obvious, but for the longest time, it was believed that the pools were made of solidified cotton, the area's principal export, that giants left out to dry. Can't lie, when it comes to geology, I do prefer giant theories over alien theories. Much funnier to visualize. Game of Boulders. New Zealand is well known as the filming location of The Lord of the Rings. But down on Cocoa Beach, you'll find something that looks like it's straight out of Game of Thrones. There's a collection of giant, spherical boulders nestled in the sand that look strangely similar to dragon eggs. But as far as we know, with no one eager to explore the desert, it's no surprise that one of the world's most impressive geological wonders went undiscovered for centuries. It wasn't until 1965, when astronauts were orbiting the Earth, that they saw something huge lurking in this barren desert. It was the Richat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara, thanks to the huge concentric circles that make it look eerily like a giant's eye, staring out of the desert. While the central ring dike stretches a mere 66 feet across, the entire eye itself stretches more than 25 miles in diameter. It's so large that at ground level, it doesn't look like much, and the full eye effect can only really be seen when it's viewed from up high. Well, no wonder it took so long to discover. While it was initially theorized that it could be an impact crater from a massive meteor, its striking circular structure has led many conspiracy nuts to believe that this is actually the ancient site of the famous sunken city of Atlantis. It sounds wild, but it does resemble an account of Atlantis described by the great philosopher Plato some 2,500 years ago, specifically the rings around each level of the city. And its proximity to the ocean does mean it might have been submerged at some point in history. But, sorry to poop on Plato's parade, the elliptical structure didn't always look like this. Rather, over 600 million years ago, it was a gigantic dome rising out of the ground. The surrounding landscape was a lush area abundant with rivers and lakes, a stark contrast to the dry desert it is today. The dome was formed when layers of sandstone were pushed up by volcanic activity, and layers of igneous rock formed on its surface from lava deposits. Then, just over 100 million years ago, this volcanic dome erupted violently. As a result, the dome collapsed in on itself, while water erosion from the flowing rivers across the landscape began to eat away at the rock. But the layers of sandstone and volcanic rock eroded at different rates, resulting in this ring-like effect. So, no sunken cities here, just sunken conspiracy theorist dreams. Abracadabra. Mawlyngnaung is a small village in the East Khasi Hills in northeast India. It's a charming little village. It's even been voted Asia's cleanest village. But Mawlyngnaung isn't just the home of miraculous cleanliness. On the outskirts of the village, a geological wonder awaits. A boulder, hovering in mid-air. Now, this giant rock defies the forces of gravity. And how is that possible? Well, this strange phenomenon has been achieved through the unmatched power of Photoshop. Yep, the viral images of the rock like this are a total hoax. In reality, this huge boulder balances atop a smaller boulder that has been airbrushed out of the shot. Well, that's disappointing, to say the least. Nevertheless, there is still a strange mystery behind this rock. Enclosed in a wire fence, the large boulder has been balanced here for thousands of years. Countless cyclones and torrential typhoons have swept through the area, but none have managed to topple it. And no one knows why this rock monument was built in the first place. Local historians suggest it was an ancient shrine of the Kazi tribes before the adoption of Christianity. However, the elders of the village say the rock was the stage for human sacrifices made 1,000 years ago to appease the gods. To this day, the origin of the balancing Malingnong rock monument remains unsolved. All we do know now is that the world's miracles are best performed by Photoshop. Skater Boy. Down south in Arizona, along the Coyote Buttes Ravine, there's a series of undulating rocks where nature has apparently made the perfect skate park. Simply known as the Wave, it's a geological landmark consisting of sculpted red rock that formed back in the Jurassic era, over 190 million years ago. The desert dunes here were compacted and gradually solidified into striped sandstone. The biggest trough is 62 feet wide, 118 feet long, and could contain 7 half-pipes stacked side by side within it. But unfortunately, this isn't a place